All right, ladies and gentlemen, I just ran into Dr. Knewby. She's a historian here at Norfolk State, and I just wanted to talk to her a little bit about the Nat Turner story and why it's important for us to know. I know you're a bit of a historian, okay?
Yes.
With the story of Nat Turner, why is it important for this story to be passed down and told?
You know, the Nat Turner story is really a story about slavery and race in this country, and how when African Americans take their freedom by force, which is something that David Walker talked about in his appeal, and that was published in 1829, where African Americans should claim the ideas of the American Revolution, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so when he actually put that in action, there was a reaction to that. And while it didn't, they believed it had to be violent. I wasn't there. I'm not going to comment on whether that was right or wrong, but certainly their lives were filled with violence. There was the violence of punishment if they didn't work hard enough. There was the violence of separation from their families. There was the violence of just being a slave and being owned by another person and being regarded not as a human being, but as an animal, as chattel, as a pig or a horse or a cow. And so this story has been retold so many times by white America, interviewing the descendants of some of the survivors from white America, but this story has not been told by African Americans from their perspective of why have this revolt. Blacks have been vilified as evil, as criminals, as hateful, and even the color of Nat Turner, the way they've depicted him, is they've darkened his skin, when indeed in the records he was categorized, he was described as a light-skinned African American. And so the shift then to finally talking about this human being and the choices that he made, and why he perhaps made those choices, and the violent afterflow following that revolution, is, I think, very important for us to go back. We're in 2016, and it's time that we begin to go back to looking again at history and putting correctives, because the history has been written to support white America and the white power structure, and erasing this issue of slavery as if it's a chapter in the history. These weren't slaves, they were more family members, servants. Oh, they loved, you know, their masters and all of that, and to really shifting it to the more correct narrative that while you had a handful of people who may have felt that way, the vast majority, I'm always reminded of what someone said in the ex-slave interviews in the 1930s. He said, if somebody told me I had to be a slave again, well, I'd just kill myself. And I think that is perhaps, that statement is perhaps the most accurate description of the horrors of slavery, and what happens then when you try to hold people in slavery, in bondage. And you think about the aftermath of the Nat Turner revolt. Nat Turner's wife was tortured after following the revolt to reveal information that she had about her husband. We don't know all of that story. But hopefully, as historians begin to look again, that they look through a different lens and begin to develop mechanisms to record these oral accounts that were passed down generationally in what was Southampton County with the descendants of Nat Turner.
Well, speaking of passed down, and we're looking at a lot of racial issues going on out here right now. You know, things are really tense when it comes to the policing and things like that. But a lot of people seem to have forgotten those stories of our history. Do you feel as if our generation today is detached from their history, and if so, why?
I think that history has been managed, and it's been managed by those who are in power and control. And I'm not a big fan of the standards of learning. I think that they've done more harm than good, especially in terms of helping our young people to understand our past and why things have happened. They've really been controlled by the politicians in power to encourage people to only think that the only relevant people were white men who were the founders or the controllers of the political machines.
Kind of a mental warfare, if you will.
Absolutely. But one of the things that I think, 2016, we're in 2016, and that means that we're really only 16 years into the 21st century. And historians and sociologists tell you that it takes about 20 years to actually get into a new century. And I think we're at a precipice. We are leaving that past that W.B. Du Bois talked about, that the problem of the 20th century will be the color line. And we're moving into another type of generation. The millennials, for example, are finally starting to ask the questions that the Gen Xers did not ask about their past, and that the baby boomers wanted to forget, because the baby boomers were brought up in segregation, and there's a lot of pain associated with that time period and high expectations that were not met, that we would move into a society that was different. So here we are, and the millennials are saying, well, wait a minute now, why are we in this situation that we're in? And they're starting to advocate and demand change. And when young people say they want to carve out a different path than their parents or their grandparents, that's when we know we have raised up leaders to hopefully take us into the 21st century and into a different future.
No doubt about it. And that's what it's all about, passing on the torch and bringing progress to our people. This is The Video Show. This is Dr. Knewby. I thank you so much, all right?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, for more of The Video Show, log on to thevadioshow.com. And while you're at it, subscribe to our YouTube, at The Video Show.